Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar all about statutory sick pay in Sage 50 Payroll. My name's Alice and I'm going to be presenting today's webinar. I'm also joined by some of my lovely colleagues in the background, though today I've got Duncan, Johnny, Ollie and Natalie who'll be helping me out on the Q&A. We are expecting quite a busy session, so a big thank you to the team there in advance. And a little look at what we'll be covering in the session today too. So 4 main sections. I am going to begin with an introduction to statutory sick pay, so a bit of an overview of what it is, the entitlement, qualifying conditions, and just some general rules around SSP as well. And we'll then move on to recording sickness. So a couple of ways that you can do this in the programme. I want to show you both of those options and kind of explain what's best for which way and how to be able to record that SSP in the programme. Now, once you have recorded it, we will then be talking about adjusting your employees' payments. So just a couple of kind of common scenarios there of how you might adjust your employees' payments to accommodate for that SSP. And then lastly, just a short section on troubleshooting too. So what to check if you do have an issue arise with SSP, maybe something's not calculating as you're expecting, or the figure looks a bit different to what you're expecting too. So I will be going over kind of my top tips and the first things that I would check in those scenarios. But beginning with that introduction, you will hear me say SSP quite a lot today. So SSP just stands for statutory sick pay. And this is the minimum amount that you should be paying to qualifying employees when they're off sick. So it's going to be paid to employees when they're ill, when they're unable to come to work. But you might pay them a little bit more if you do have a company sick pay scheme, which is something that we'll loop back to a bit later. Now, the rate of statutory sick pay is currently a weekly rate of £118.75. So that's for the 25-26 tax year. And that did increase from £116.75 in the new tax year, so from April. And just to let you know, this doesn't relate to the employee's payment frequency. So it doesn't matter if they're weekly, monthly, fortnightly even, it is a weekly rate regardless. And this is for a period of incapacity for work of up to 28 weeks. So that is the entitlement of SSP. A little look at the qualifying conditions an employee must meet as well for SSP. So employees must have an employment contract and they must have also done some work under that contract for you as well. So if you've hired somebody new and they're ringing sick before they actually work for you, they don't meet that qualifying condition. They must have also been sick for 4 or more days in a row. This does include non-working days, and this is known as a period of incapacity for work or a PIW. So you will hear me say PIW a lot. That just means period of incapacity for work. They also need to be earning at least an average of £125 per week, and this average is taken in the 8-week period prior to the first day of sickness, or it's going to be taken from any periods that they've worked if that is less than 8 weeks. And then lastly, they do also need to give you notice and proof of illness when needed. So what I mean by this is like a sick note or a statement of fitness to work for proof. So with this, if a sickness lasts 7 days or less, the employee can actually self-certify their sickness. But if it's more than 7 days, you can and should ask for proof of illness. So this would be more of like an official sick note. And I have included more information at the bottom of this slide just on eligibility, as well as what to do if the employee doesn't qualify for SSP. So that link there will go to the gov.uk information. And before we move on to recording sickness too, just a couple of general rules for SSP. So the SSP payment itself is only for qualifying days. So these are the employee's normal working days or contracted working days. So for me, for example, my contracted working days are Monday to Friday. So this means that my qualifying days for SSP would also be Monday to Friday, and Saturday and Sunday, they would be non-qualifying days. You would also pay SSP on the employee's normal pay date, so no need to change that in the programme. The first 3 qualifying days are known as waiting days, and no SSP is going to be payable for these waiting days. So for example, the employee would go on sick, but the SSP wouldn't actually kick in until that 4th qualifying day of absence. Now the exception for this is known as a linked period. So this is when there's a period of sickness with a gap of 8 weeks or less from the previous period of sickness. So with a linked period, the sickness itself, it does not need to be related to the previous one, As long as the gap is 8 weeks or less, they won't serve those 3 waiting days again for that new PIW, and the sick pay would instead kind of kick in and resume from that first qualifying day, providing, of course, that that PIW was also 4 days or more and qualified for SSP. So just as an example there, if somebody was off sick for 2 weeks and this absence qualified for SSP, and they'd served those 3 waiting days with that PIW, but then 4 weeks later, they were off again, but only for 2 days. Now, yes, it is within that 8 weeks of the previous PIW, so it technically is a linked period, but that second instance of 2 days, of course, was not 4 days or more, so it won't qualify for SSP to begin with. And you will see a little bit more about this when I do the demonstration in the programme too. You'll get a bit more of a visual there. But before we do dive into the programme and things like that, one last thing to mention in this introduction, and that is to do with the proposed changes to SSP, which are coming no sooner than April 2026. So obviously nothing is completely set in stone yet, but these proposed changes with SSP are to remove the waiting days, so making SSP payable from the first day of sickness. Also removing the earnings requirements, so they'd no longer need to earn an average of £125 per week. So that would make all employees eligible for SSP regardless of their current earnings. And to also make the SSP rate payable to employees either the lower of the SSP weekly rate or 80% of their average weekly earnings. So just to let you know, we are aware of this, obviously keeping an eye on it. And if any SSP legislation does change, we will release a software update to include these changes and just make sure you are still remaining compliant with all of that legislation. But as of right now, I will just be talking about the existing legislation in today's webinar. Now, if you do want to know a little bit more about this, I have linked an article at the bottom of this slide. That is also the article that will be updated as soon as we know a bit more about this. But let's move on to recording sickness. So as I said, a couple of ways that you can do this in the programme, just depends on the way that you would prefer. You can either use the absence diary, so this is found in the employee record and absence. You can also find this in the SSP tab in Enter Payments. And then you've got the other option of Quick SSP. So this is found in the Payroll Link section and the Employee Task section as well. Quick SSP, this does also have the option to print a report of the information that you've inputted too. So if you do want to keep record of the information that you've put into the programme, you absolutely can. Now, I will be showing you both of these options, but regardless of which way you use, what it's going to do is produce information that shows on the absence diary. And this is going to show in the form of various letters or symbols, depending on what that day in the diary is. So just want to go through what these are. So first letter that you might come across is the letter X. Now this indicates a waiting day, so the first 3 qualifying days of sickness in a PIW. Lowercase is going to mean that it's for the current period, so it hasn't yet been updated and paid, so you've not updated the records yet. But if it's a capital letter X, this means that it's for a historical period that has already been updated and paid. You then got the letter P, so this stands for a paid SSP day, and same goes with lowercase being for the current period, capital letter of course being historical and already paid. Next symbol, so you've got a dash or an equal sign. This is going to represent a non-qualifying day. So sticking with my example, I work Monday to Friday. I would see these symbols over the weekend as they are non-qualifying days, or they're not my working days there. We've also got a red letter A. Now this represents sickness absence which doesn't qualify for SSP. So most common place that you'll see this is if you've inputted sickness onto the absence diary or just inputted SSP for the employee that's less than 4 days in a row. So it's not quite long enough to qualify for SSP, hasn't formed a PIW, and that will just show as a red letter A on the absence diary instead. And then last letter is a W, so this is a day marked as SSP withheld. This most likely will appear after all of the 28 weeks entitlements been paid, or if you've ticked a box which withholds the SSP for another reason for the employee. So do keep an eye out for these symbols in the demonstration. I should be showing you most, if not all of them today. And I have also talked a little bit about qualifying and non-qualifying days, but to determine what a qualifying day is for your employees, you will also need to set up a working day pattern for them. So this is going to be used to record waiting days and determine what the paid SSP days will be for the employees. As you can see on that screenshot there, the working day pattern, it consists of N's and Q's. So an N is just a non-qualifying day, Q is for a qualifying day. And the employees' waiting days and paid SSP days would only be recorded on the qualifying days as per their pattern. So I'll show you how to kind of set this up and customize this as you need really shortly there in the demo. Now, once a sickness is recorded, of course, you can check that and enter payments. You can see how much it's paying, how many weeks it's paying as well. And from here, you can also edit, extend, or delete current sickness if required. Something I always remind people at this point as well is that SSP and all statutory payments are calculated up to and including your process date too. So it is only going to pay the employee what's calculated in the current pay period, and any days that fall after the process date, they would be paid in a future pay period. So I did just want to begin with a bit of an insight into what SSP is, of course, how to qualify and how you can record it. But let's dive into a demo. There's a couple of employees that I need to add SSP to. So I'm logged into Sage 50 Payroll, and first thing I'm going to do in this demo is just check my process date. So just from the payroll section, I'll go to change process date. And my next pay date is going to be 31st of July, as I pay my employees on the last day of each month. So setting my process date to this means that any sickness entries up to and including this date will be used in the current period's calculations for SSP. So just set that process date there. And as I showed you on the slides, a couple of ways that you can enter SSP. So first way I'm going to show you is how to do it using the absence diary. So you can find this by going to the employee's record and then clicking on the absence tab. And we can see this is the absence diary. So before we record any absence dates, first things first, I do need to set up the employee's working day pattern, and that's going to determine those qualifying days. So from further information at the bottom, I'll click on the SSP button. So in here, some great information about SSP. So first tab, for example, shows the payments that have been used to calculate their average earnings. So we see 2 monthly payments of £2,000 to figure out this average earnings and see whether they meet that minimum of £125 per week. There's also the previous PIW tab as well. So this will show a previous what the previous PIW is, and Payroll will use this to determine whether the new PIW is going to be a linked period or not. But the tab we're bothered about is just this middle one here, qualifying days. So this is where you'll be able to set up the employee's working day pattern. So for this employee, I can see there's already a pattern in here, and this is probably the most common one for a Monday to Friday working pattern. So it does go from Sunday to Saturday. So we can see Sunday and Saturday there are non-qualifying days for the weekend, but they work Monday to Friday. So we've got Monday to Friday there showing as qualifying days. Now this is the employee's working day pattern, but let's say it wasn't correct. You can actually use this drop down here to select an alternative pattern. So there is quite a lot of options in there. If, for example, they only worked weekends, see Sunday and Saturday as qualifying days there, Monday to Friday non-qualifying. So you do have a lot of options to choose from in there. And you can actually also set up your own bespoke pattern too. So feel free to kind of type in this box and make up that pattern as necessary for the employee. Or even set up shifts as well. So if your employee has like a 3-week shift pattern, for example, you can enter a few weeks worth of working day patterns. So we've got the first week there. We would just click into that blank space underneath and then create the second week and then third week, for example, just as a random example there. So 3 weeks worth of shifts. And the program's basically going to progress through these and start again. So this working pattern would repeat every 3 weeks. And then after 3 weeks, it would resume at the top again and kind of work through. So you are able to set up a couple of weeks there too. But as you can see, the working pattern can become quite complex. It just depends on the situation. But yeah, fully customizable there to whatever suits the employee. Another thing to mention at this point, if the employee doesn't have set days that they work, and maybe they're a casual worker, HMRC guidance does actually allow you and the employee to agree on a standard working pattern for the purposes of SSP. So you would be able to either select one from this drop-down and agree with this with the employee, or of course just type in your own and kind of create a bespoke one there. I'll just get rid of those ones there. So I'm going to stick with Monday to Friday for this employee. Just remove those other weeks. Just double check that pattern start date as well. So that's the date that this pattern would begin from. And from here, I'm just going to go ahead and click OK. Now, because we've changed things in here, the qualifying date, this message will come up just to confirm that we've made those changes. It could impact any SSP information which has already been entered. So I'm going to go ahead and click Yes. Perfect. So this now means that the employee's qualifying days and SSP days will only land on weekdays. And that is the working day pattern all set up. So from here, it is now time to record the SSP in the diary. So using the absence diary, one way you can do it is just by clicking Diary Entry. So just below this calendar here. What this will allow you to do is choose the absence type. So I can see it's already set to SSP for me there. And also you can choose sickness, withheld, or historical. So we'll stick with sickness for this as it's going to be a current sickness there. And you can also enter the dates from and to. So just using this calendar icon. This employee was off from Monday the 7th of July until Friday the 18th. So I'll select those dates there. You can add a comment as well. So this employee had a sick note, so I'll pop that on. And this would show on the absence diary and any of the kind of detailed SSP reports that you might run, it will show that comment on there for you. But that's all I need to do, so I'll click OK. And there we go, straight away I can see some of those symbols that we talked about before, and we can see that's recorded there on the absence diary. Note this as well, if I click and kind of hover over this, I can see that note that I added, that they've got a sick note too. So we'll talk a little bit about these symbols. So first thing to notice there is that all of these letters are lowercase. So this is because it's the current unupdated and unpaid period. We've got 3 X's, so these are the 3 waiting days for this PIW, along with the paid SSP days showing as lowercase p's. And then of course, just for the weekend, because they're non-qualifying days, we do have those showing as dashes. It is important just to make sure that the sickness is continuous, especially if the employee hasn't returned to work, just to make sure you've got those 4 or more consecutive days to qualify for SSP. But that's all recorded, and providing these dates are in the current period, i.e. before my process date, the SSP will calculate and enter payments for me. So that is one way that you can add sickness onto the absence diary. But let's say you added the wrong dates. To quickly remove current absence, you would just left click and drag across those dates, right click, and out of these options here, you'll just go ahead and click None. So this will remove any kind of current sickness if you've entered the wrong dates, for example. And then similar principle, a quick way to add sickness onto the absence diary is again just to left click and drag across those dates. We can see the date selection at the top there. I'll right click, I'll go to SSP, and then I'll click Due to Sickness. Another option there to add a comment. So I'm just going to pop the same one on there and click OK. And there we go, we can see same symbols as before there. We can see that sickness recorded on the absence diary. So that is the sickness recorded the first way, absence diary in the record. And a little bit later, you will see the SSP automatically calculate. But before we check enter payments, I do actually want to show you the other way of recording sickness, which is via the quick SSP option. So I'll just save this record, close that down. And the next employee that I need to add sickness for is employee number 3. So I'll just go ahead and highlight them. So this other option for recording sickness, you can find this in the payroll link section. So we can see that there. You can also find it in the employee tasks as well. So we can see recording sickness too. Quick note with the link section too, if you can't see those options, just remember you can resize that window if necessary. But I'll just go ahead and click on recording sickness. So this window will come up, same information that you're going to be entering, only this time it's a slightly different format. So obviously in the record we have those different tabs to click through, but in this option everything's just on one page for you. So firstly we'll go ahead and enter the dates of the absence for this employee. So it was the 14th of July until the 23rd of July. Once we've got those dates in, I'm going to click Calculate Entitlement. That's the programme checking those qualifying conditions, and straight away I can see it's calculated the entitlement due as £118.75, which just so happens to be the weekly rate of SSP. In here, you also have the option to check the qualifying days on the left for the employee. So if you did need to change this, very similar to how we did in the record, you've got that drop down there. You can also type in here and then of course create multiple weeks if you wish. And if you do want to check what payments have been used to get to the average earnings figure that we can see on the right here, you do have this earnings during set period option. So this will come up with what payments have been used to get to that average. So again, 2 monthly payments of £2,000, average across those 8 weeks there is £461.54. And I did touch on this before, but there is also a print option at the bottom of this. So this will print a summary of all of the information in here, including the key dates, average earnings, qualifying days, etc. Just if you do want to keep record of kind of what you've inputted into the programme. So I'll just click Save and Close. That's the quick SSP option. An alternative way to set up SSP. And if we just pop back to this employee's record and show you the absence diary now, we can see I do have that sickness now showing in there with similar symbols to the other employee. So the 3 waiting days, paid SSP days, and then of course just those non-qualifying days across the weekend there. So now that the SSP is ended, I'm just going to close this down. We're just going to pretend that I've done all of the other preparations that I need to and that I'm ready to process the pay run itself. So quick note as well with SSP, if you do pay your employees in arrears, more common for weekly employees, I would recommend that when you record the sickness, you record the dates for the period that you're paying them for, and that way you'll be able to pay the SSP in arrears as well. But continuing with today's example, we're just going to go ahead and open up Enter Payments. And we'll check that this is calculating okay. So I'm going to go to the SSP/parental leave tab. Great, and straight away we've got a kind of mini version of the absence diary in here, again showing those symbols that we inputted before. So for this first employee, I can see the absence entries. And in here I can also see the SSP payable, so the amount that it's going to be paying this current period, and the SSP weeks as well, so it's telling me how many weeks are going to be paid this period. So although they're off for 2 weeks, they did serve those 3 waiting days, so it's working out as 1.4 weeks of payable SSP. So each P here, each day, is going to be 0.2 of a week, hence the 1.4 for 1 week, and then 2 days as well, obviously minus those waiting days. Let me just show you the other employee as well, so slightly different dates here, but on the same tab. So it's showing as SSP payable, that weekly rate of £118.75, and SSP weeks at 1 week. And again, that's because of those waiting days there. Now, let's say this employee returned to work, so they came back to work on this Thursday here, but they actually fell ill again and had to be off towards the end of the week. So I can use this absence diary to edit the current sickness as well. So I can left click and drag to enter some extra SSP for them. Right click, SSP, and due to sickness, so just the same as we did in the record. Perfect. And then notice as well, this is a linked period. So it's within 8 weeks of this previous PIW. So we can see the employee isn't serving those waiting days again. What's happened is the SSP has just kind of kicked in and resumed straight away because it does qualify for SSP. Just to show you another symbol as well, let me just remove one of these days. and we can see that changes to show as red A's on the absence diary. So although it is within 8 weeks of that previous PIW, the sickness is less than 4 days, so it does not qualify for SSP and therefore is just showing as absence. But if I extended that by a day again, let me just select that date, due to sickness, we can see that changes now to qualify for SSP. It also increases this SSP payable and SSP weeks at the bottom there too. So I'll just remove that, but it was just to show you a couple more symbols. And that is how to record SSP and obviously check that it's calculating and enter payments as well. Just want to close this for now and we'll go back to the slides for a bit of a recap before we move on to the next section. So statutory sick pay can be recorded either via the absence diary, which is in the employee record in absence, or as we've seen there, you can also find that in enter payments too. You've also got the other option of quick SSP, also called recording sickness in the programme, and this can be found in the payroll links or on the employee tasks. Now, once you've recorded the sickness, it will show on the absence diary as those different symbols. So remember, lowercase is for current sickness, and then uppercase, that would be for historical and already paid sickness too. And just a reminder to set up the employee's working day pattern, you can do that in the record in the qualifying days tab. And lastly, in enter payments, you can use the absence diary in there to edit, extend or delete current sickness, and then also check how much SSP is getting paid in the current period too. But now that we've got that calculating, that does bring us on to the next section of the webinar, which is going to be about adjusting your employees' payments to accommodate for this statutory payment. So the SSP will calculate automatically, as we've seen, but you will likely need to make some changes and adjustments to their pay, or you might end up paying their wage plus SSP, which will be too much. So I am going to show you a few common scenarios that you might come across, but please do bear in mind this is very company specific. It does depend on any policies or schemes that your company have with SSP, and yeah, just how your company does things. But the first scenario that I want to show you is an option called Make Up Basic. This is a really good option for companies that do have a policy in place for an employee to get their full wage for a certain amount of time, for example. So Make Up Basic will allow you to reduce the employee's normal pay to take into consideration the amount of sick pay that's being calculated for them, and just help to make sure that you don't pay them too much. And then the next option that I'm going to be showing you is manual adjustments. So this one is a really good option if you don't have a company sick pay scheme, or maybe the employees had their entitlement of sick pay, so it's run out. And with this option, you can adjust the payments manually and reduce it to the days or hours that they've worked, and then only pay them for those. So let's just go straight back to the demo, and I'm going to show you these options in Enter Payments. So still with employee number 1 and 3 highlighted, we'll go back into Enter Payments. And we'll just stick with employee number 1 first of all. So straight away on the Payments tab, I can see they've got their full salary in here. So £2,000 per month. But if we just go to the Summary tab, I can see they've got that £2,000. So they've got their full wage, but they're getting that SSP on top of that. So they're getting paid too much. I actually want their total gross pay for the month to be £2,000. So that's why I can use that Make Up Basic option for this employee. They're still covered by the company sick pay scheme in this scenario. So I'm going to make up their SSP to pay them their full normal wage of £2,000. So to use this option, step 1 in the Payments tab, I'm just going to make sure that their full basic pay is in here. So we've got the hours and number at 1. I've got their rate set to 2,000 there for the month. And then I'm just going to go to Summary and make that adjustment now. So I'll click Make Up Basic. You will see this message come up, so it's just letting you know that we're making up to basic the statutory payment for this employee. And to do this, Payroll is going to do it automatically for us, but it is going to reduce the hours and number value of the salary pay element to kind of accommodate for that. So we'll click Yes to this. And straight away, I can see that total gross pay there has reduced to the amount that I'd specified, so £2,000. So that is their full wage. And if you go back to the payments tab again, it's done this by reducing the hours and number value of this salary to accommodate for the amount of SSP that the employee was receiving this period. So now they're getting paid exactly what I want, and that is that adjustment done for the employee. So simple adjustment to make. The program does that calculation for you, of course, but really good option for employees who are part of a company sick pay scheme, and that specifies them to receive their full pay for a particular period of time. Just moving on to my next employee then, different scenario for this one. So let's actually assume that there is no sick pay scheme here. Still get that full wage of £2,000 per month. And if we go to the SSP parental leave tab, remember this employee had that 1 week payable of SSP, £118.75. So I need to work out how much to pay this employee for the days that they've worked in July. Of course, payroll is monthly, process date's 31st of July. And this particular employee would normally have a total of 23 working days in July as per their working day pattern of Monday to Friday. Now bear in mind that might change based on the specific employee's contracted hours or days, but for this specific employee, Monday to Friday there, 23 total working days. So out of those total days in the pay period, because of this sickness, they've actually only worked 15 of them as they were sick for 8. So this manual adjustment I'm going to do is going to calculate that out of the full 23-day period of £2,000, how much of that is going to be 15 days worth. So to do this adjustment, we're going to do that in the Payments tab. Again, just make sure you've got that full salary in here as normal. And then in this hours and number box, you'll see you've got a little calculator icon. So I'm going to use this to do a calculation in here. And I'm going to do the days that this employee worked. So they've worked 15 days in July, divided by the total working days in the pay period for this employee, which was 23. I'll click equals and then tab on my keyboard and just notice that amount there on the right hand side has changed. So that is the adjustment. What it's done is reduce the salary there, and that is 15 days worth of £2,000, with that being 23 days total. So that is the adjustment there, and in the summary tab we can see we've got the 15 days worth of pay there for the employee, plus the SSP that they're due for the current period as well. So that is the amount that they're getting paid for the month. So I'm happy with those adjustments there. Just going to click Save and Close. And I'm just going to move on with the rest of my pay run as normal. I'm obviously not going to go through that in too much detail today, but just a couple of things I do want to show you. One thing I do want to show you is how the SSP shows on a few of the pre-update reports. So again, just got my employees highlighted still, and we'll go ahead and click on pre-update reports. Perfect, so no favourites for me at the moment, but I do want to show you just the standard kind of laser pace at which I would normally run. So I'll go to the laser section there and preview this, because you will get the SSP showing nice and clearly on there. I'll just make this a little bit bigger for us as well. Great, so employee number 1, we can see that sick pay showing there as £166.25. And then we've also got that reduced salary there because we use that make up basic option. So payroll worked out that this is the amount that we need to make up this SSP by to reach that specified amount that we'd said. And just scrolling down to the next employee, employee number 3, yeah, we can see that reduced salary there using that manual adjustment. So that was 15 days worth of salary for them, plus that 1 week that they were entitled of SSP showing there too. So it will show on the payslip for them. And another report that I would like to show you is actually the payment summary part 1 report. That's just going to be in the summary section. So payment summary part 1, we do have landscape or portrait. I always just go with landscape. But this is a really great report to run at a pre-update stage. And if I just open this up, so of course we've only got 2 employees highlighted, but if you had everyone, this would show a really good breakdown going from gross all the way to net pay. And we can see SSP there has its own column, just showing you the amounts there for the employees with totals at the bottom too. So that's the payment summary part 1 in this case landscape. Perfect, so I do just want to update the records for my employees. A couple of things I want to show you which will change after the fact. So we'll click on Update Records. Always take a backup at this point as well, just to make sure they've got a pre-update backup should you ever need to go back to edit anything. Perfect, and I can see everyone's last updated date's now changed to 31st of July. So now that the records are updated, I would like to show you what's happened on the absence diary for these employees. Because if we go into the record and go to absence, this is no longer current sickness. Because we've updated the records, it's now historical. So we can see that these letters and symbols have changed and they're now showing as capital letters. And the dash is now changed to an equal sign as well. So this is just to reflect that the pay period's been updated for this employee. If we just check that next employee as well, yep, same for them, so capital letters there. I do just want to quickly go to SSP as well from the further information section. And if we now go to that previous PIW tab, because we now have a previous PIW of sickness, we can see it's got the information in there. And Payroll will use this to determine whether the next period of sickness is going to be a linked period or not. This is also a really great screen for troubleshooting too. So it's just from the further information tab on absence, you've got SSP and then previous PIW. Perfect, I'll just save those records. So I did just want to show you a few common scenarios when it comes to adjusting your employees' payments. You either had the Make Up Basic option. So that's really good for scenarios where you pay the full wage to an employee, but you want to accommodate for that statutory payment. And then you've also got manual adjustments too. So these can be used to calculate how much an employee gets for the days worked in a period. You can also use a manual adjustment for leavers and other scenarios as well. So if you had a leaver who left partway through the month, you can use the same kind of principle there to work out how much pay they're going to be getting paid for the days that they worked out of that full pay period. As always as well, you do have more information just linked at the bottom of these slides, but that does bring us to the end of adjusting your employees' payments. So about 5 minutes or so left of the webinar. I do want to move on to the last section, just a short one, but this is just about troubleshooting. So you might find that no SSP is calculating, or that the amount of SSP is different to what you're expecting. As we've seen today, quite a few factors which can affect how the SSP calculates. So I've put together a bit of a list of some of the main areas to check, definitely things that I would advise to check, and just make sure that everything in those kind of sections is correct. And if you do have any problems, kind of checking against this criteria here, we'll just try to make sure that you can see what the problem is and kind of fix it going forward. So what to check? First one, always the first one that I suggest is the process date. So I did touch on this before, but remember that SSP pays up to and including the process date. So if all of the dates of sickness are after your process date, there will actually be no SSP calculating until the sickness dates fall before the process date. Second thing to bear in mind is the diary entries. So on the absence diary, what letters or symbols are appearing? Remember, if it is a red letter A, this means that the sickness is likely 4 days or less, therefore does not qualify for SSP, so there'll be nothing calculating for them. Or if the letters or symbols are capitals, that means they've already been paid and updated, so those dates won't be paid again. And then just a reminder of those waiting days too. So this could mean that the SSP is showing 3 days less sick pay than you're expecting, and they'll show as X's on the diary. We've then got qualifying days. So if the SSP payable amount looks different to what you're expecting, but the dates are correct, it could be that the employee has the wrong working pattern assigned to them. So remember, you are able to check that in the employee's record. And a couple more things to bear in mind. So if nothing's calculating, I would also advise just checking the average earnings, and you can do that in the SSP information. So it must be above that £125 per week in order for the employee to qualify for SSP. So just double check that, make sure the payments that it's using is correct. You are able to change that figure if needed. So if it is showing the wrong figure, you are able to recalculate, or just double check that in there. And then last thing I always advise people to check is that previous PIW tab in the SSP information. So are the details in here correct, and does it reflect what's already been paid? Or maybe they've already had their entitlement of 28 weeks SSP. If they have, that sickness will begin to show as W's on the diary, so that means withheld, and it wouldn't calculate anything in that scenario either. So they're kind of the 5 main things I would definitely check if you are seeing anything that doesn't look quite right with SSP. And just to help you with this as well, I have attached a really handy article at the bottom of this slide. This will help you work through checking those different areas of the programme and kind of get to the root of the problem if you need it. It's just a troubleshooting guide on SSP, and it's from our help centre at sage.co.uk/help. But that does bring us to the end of the main content for statutory sick pay today. Still a couple of minutes left to ask any last minute questions that you've got, so I can still see the team working on those. If you've got any, make sure to get them in now, and we'll try our very best to answer them all before I end the webinar. But while they're working through those last questions, I do just want to go through a little bit of further support with you as well. So starting with webinars, me and Duncan do run these throughout the year for Sage 50 Payroll. We've got loads coming up in July, including maternity pay. We've got online pay slips and P60s, a couple of sessions on getting your payroll done. So we've got a processing payroll part 1, and then we've also got part 2, which covers your more month-end tasks too. We've also got a webinar on your guide to HMRC submissions, so talking about what each of those submissions are, deadlines for them, and how you can submit those in the programme, as well as the Sage HR showcase on the core HR module too. So definitely get yourself signed up for them. We've got multiple dates available for each, and you can sign up at sage.co.uk/webinars. And as I've touched on as well, the Sage Help Centre, sage.co.uk/help. Most of the articles that I've linked today on the slides are from the Help Centre. Really great resource there just to get more information if you've got a particular problem or just want to know a little bit more about a topic. Loads of different support guides on here. We've also got a webinar section there too. That does also have recordings of all of the previous sessions that we've done. So if you do want to watch any of those, feel free to do so. And if you do need to get into contact with our experts and get some technical support, for example, we do have all of those contact options on the Help Centre too. And then last but not least is Sage University. So here you're able to set up a free account and you can access different e-learning and bite-sized learning, as well as earning product certification too. So if you use Sage 50 Payroll, Sage 50 Accounts, Sage HR, any product really, loads of different learning paths on those. Great way to expand your knowledge, as I said, and that is just sageu.com. But as I said, that has brought us to the end of the webinar, so thank you so much for your time this morning. If you are leaving us now, just to remember that you can download the handouts. These will include all of the slides from today's presentation. And then if you have found any of the Q&A responses helpful, please feel free to copy and paste these if you would like to keep them for future reference. And last ask from me, there will be a short survey that you'll get as you exit the webinar. So if you do have just a minute to fill that out, if you've got any comments to leave, we would really appreciate that. We do read all of the feedback and it does go a long way there. So thank you in advance for that. But I can still see the team working on those questions. So what I'm going to do for now is just pop on a mute for a few minutes, help with those last questions, and then I'll come back in a few moments to say goodbye. So yeah, I'll see you in a couple of moments. Hello everyone, that is just me back again. It looks like we're just about getting those last answers out to you. I will keep the webinar open until we've made through all of them. But yeah, keep an eye on your emails for a recording of the webinar coming through. You will be able to rewatch that as many times as you need to, rewatch all of the demonstrations and things like that. But yeah, on behalf of the team, we do really hope that you enjoy the rest of your week. We'd love to see you on another webinar very soon. Remember to sign up at sage.co.uk/webinars. But on behalf of me and my colleagues behind the scenes, we will see you next time. It's goodbye for now.